we're going to go through just a little bit on that project timeline visual, just to show you what's going on. And we're going to switch this all around. We're just shuffling the deck here. Kelly's going to do videos needed thing, welcome orientation. I'm going to do entity management demo, and then Olivia's going to take over and consume the rest of your day. So let me get you the timeline real quick. I'll stop the share and reshare real quick, and now share my window so we don't have to do that again. Okay, so there we go. So we have a lot of stuff going on in development, as you can imagine, because there's a lot of developers going head on this thing. We're at the end of our sprint 43, sprint 43, and we are closing that out today, starting the new sprint 44 tomorrow. We have been working in just about every part of this system, all the way from user management to assessments and our intake to pre-screening stuff, services, entity management, upgrades, all kinds of stuff. And then up here, we have Olivia's working in this area with discovery, assessments, application, pre-screening. In here, we've been working on our, what we want to say is public-facing web page redesigns to get to the application and all that from a public-facing upgrade. And then, and we're obviously closing out October tomorrow. So there'll be a few of these. If you see some of these dates, we're going to be sliding over. And then we're going to be working on all this stuff, plus the stuff that slides over from October and November. So we have tons going on, and I believe I'll be able to have a UAT starting next week from what we've done in upgrades of training plan. And I think we'll be able to get through that pretty quick, because it's just going to be showing you, and you look at the upgrades from your first cycle. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Kelly, and take off.
Good morning, everyone. One thing we would like to start gathering from the different LWIAs is any of the orientation videos, welcome videos that you currently show to customers, because we're starting to compile those and look at content as we develop one for the new site. So when job seekers go to the page, they're able to get a little bit of an overview. So we're reviewing what all of you have. So if you would be able to send those over my way, we're going to get those together, review them for content, and come up with one that we can include in the system / on the job seeker page. The idea of that being that we've got a very consistent one that's shown from the beginning that gives people the the information that they might be looking for, but also, kind of next steps that they can expect, things to that nature. So if any of you have those that you can send our way, that would be great, because we're getting those compiled. And I'll put that in the recap today too as a homework item. And if I have trouble receiving some, I'll keep reminding you all over the next couple weeks. But if you can start sending those my way, that would be great.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, let me share again, because I want to show you something fun. Hopefully you'll think it's fun. All right, so we came across, this is in staging right now. It's just a demo, but you're going to see it coming up in your UAT too. We came across a scenario in entity management where you could search for a location and it would bring back the entity, and it wouldn't necessarily, you'd be kind of confused, because it's like there's nothing in that entity or that set of entities that came back in that filter. There was nothing that would really indicate that it matched your search criteria, right? Because we search over entities and locations, okay? So then we got to thinking about it a little bit and said, you know what? Let's do this a little different. Okay. And let's provide a way to see locations from entity list. So you see this little caret here, and we changed the default type on the entity to name, entity type, locations, and identification. By the way, this will end up being FEIN. I don't know why we got all these social security numbers, but anyway, and this tells you how many locations are here, right? And I'm going to show you this one because it's got 22 in it. And when you expand that, they're right there, the locations are, okay? And so not only can you see, you can see, here's the entity I'm bringing back. And when I expand that, here's the locations. I could go directly to the entity. I could go directly to one of these locations. We're showing you the address. We're actually showing you the number of contacts also in that little table. And you can go right to the location, or you can go right to the entity. Okay. So for example, let me give you an example. If I said Harold Washington, and I search for that. So this is what would come up before, and that's all that would come up. But if I expanded this and showed all these, then you could see Harold Washington's right there. Okay. Now, this needs to be corrected, but it's a good example of how we would bring back entities with those names. It could be those, we use those words also in the address, and you'd be like, okay, that didn't help me. So we gave you an expansion so you can see locations also. Hopefully that'll help and provide you with more information right up front in your fingertips. Are there any questions about that or why we did it?
Question.
Yes.
If you could go back one screen to where you were with just the drop down.
Yeah, yeah, right here. Right here.
Yeah. Is there a way to, my first gut reaction, especially with the city of Chicago colleges or whatever, was if I don't know how other areas are, but we let our users at least go in and look at things, and they would never just, I know there's a drop down, but is there a, I don't know, a little different way to highlight it or do something? And maybe I'm overthinking it, but I would have, I don't know. Maybe I'm just wasting time. Sorry.
Yeah, think about that, what you're saying. You first have to get familiar with this,
Yeah.
that down arrow.
Yep.
And you got to get, obviously trained that it's there because, yeah, if you came in off the street and said, oh, what am I looking at? I'm sure you wouldn't know, but we're using this in a couple other places also to be able to get more information at your fingertips. There's one there, obviously. But we're trying to get away from this or trying to make it better than today, where you go, I'm going to search the entity and then I'm going to hit a button and go to locations, and then I'm going to go paging through all the locations and I'm going to finally find what I'm looking for. And then I'm going to view that location. We're trying to get away from that, even though you can go like on this 22, you can go directly here. And then there's a list of locations here with paging, but you have to go all the way down in here to do that. Now, this naming convention is not very good either, but still, that gives you an opportunity to just kind of see it really quick. It's like, oh no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted, and because you don't always remember how that structure is. So
You know
but
what?
think about what you're
Quickly,
saying. Think about what you're saying, and you'll get a chance to play with it next week and see if you think that will work.
I think if the locations tab with locations column was one more over, that would have automatically, I would have looked at 160 and saw 22 and then would have clicked the drop down like right away. I think it was just because of entity type being closer to that drop down arrow than the locations. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that would, I don't know.
Oh, this here, maybe,
Yeah,
maybe.
if that column was right
And
next
we
to,
could flip those even if we
yeah,
wanted to, you know?
Yeah, I was
Uh,
gonna say similar to maybe it was a customer. There was one of the screens earlier on that we were looking at that I think you were saying the users might have the ability to drag like or customize the order of the columns or
Oh, you can do that. Yeah, you can actually still do that.
can we drag? I was because
If
yeah,
you
I
go
thought
in
the same
here,
thing.
like
If
if I took,
locations
I
was
can
right
even take
next to
out
it.
entity type, like I could take out entity type altogether.
Okay, and you could put locations closer then.
Yeah,
Okay.
or you could put, I can't remember exactly, whoops. I think they
Just-
go,
is there any merit to having that a global view, meaning locations next to the drop down and then entity type, or do
if
people
we all decide that,
value entity type? Yeah,
if we all decide that that order, default order makes more sense in a different order, there's no problem. We can, for everybody, we can make that default order different. And if we don't even, if we don't even, like, we could make the default order name, locations, and ID, which this will be most of the time FEIN. We can do that. Or if you said, you know what, I don't want entity type on the default, but I do want LWIA, then we could do that also. You know what I'm saying? So we don't have these set right now, but yeah, we can do that if we end up feeling like there's a better organization of those columns at the default level. Okay.
thank you.
All right. Okay, I'm not taking any more. I just was wanting to show that off because I thought they did a great job on that request. And I think it's, for me, it's very helpful. Hopefully it'll be helpful for you folks too. And I'll turn it over to Olivia.
Hey, everybody. All right, so I have some assessment stuff to go over with you guys today. First, I want to talk about, I am, preview this. I am getting a, oh, wrong survey. That's not what I'm going to send you. I'm getting a survey put together. I have it almost completely done, and it's going to be sent out to you guys today. I want to add a little bit of context to some of these questions. So I worked with the state last week, and we have created some additional open-ended questions that we will incorporate into the existing question set that you guys reviewed and provided feedback on. When we did this first pass, we were getting a lot of the initial parts of assessing, but not necessarily some of the comprehensive, more of the conversational, really digging into things. So we want to make sure that we're getting some of these open-ended questions included. So we compiled some, we reviewed them at the state level, and then made that a shorter, more comprehensive list. And we're going to send out a survey to you guys. So we have a welcome page. I'm linking to the Miro because I break the pages down by, like, here's some open-ended questions for goals. So this would go on the goals page. We have some for education, employment expectations. We don't have some for every single page. Some already have some open-ended questions. But we do break them down. So when you go into these, we're asking, should we include this question and then what the question is? And then you guys can say yes, no, not sure. And then optionally, you can give a little context on why you picked that. Like, this would really help us be able to do this. If you say no, typically it's because it's not going to be getting you guys more information to help serve them. Then we have the next question. Should we include this question? Optionally, you can tell us a little bit more about your response. And then if there are any other questions or comments you have about questions on this goals page, you can put those here. I did say, please note that the mockups and flag mapping documents contain the full list of questions. Obviously, these are not the only 2 questions we're going to ask around goals. These are just some additional open-ended questions that we have in addition to what's already on the page. I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but some of these, especially these next set of pages, have a lot of like data-driven questions where it's yes, no, or radio buttons. So we're not saying, I don't want anybody to think that these are the only questions we're going to be asking. These are just the open-ended ones. So you'll go through, we have some different pages here that you'll be able to go through and provide your feedback on. And then I'm going to add a page at the end for just any additional questions you would like to see on any of the pages, so that we can start working to getting that further built out. As part of what the email we send you will include the resource for the Miro and the flag mapping document as well, so that you guys can refer back to that like you did last week when you did your homework. Do you guys have any questions on the homework assignment that's going to be coming out? And we'll give you guys a week to get that filled out and back to us. All right. So what I would like to do is spend the next chunk of this session. I want to start going through your feedback. I have not had a chance to get through all of it and provide comment to some of it we might be going through for the first time, but I did get time to go through some of it. So the top training selections, do we have Allison on? Let me open my chat thing. I'm not seeing her. She wasn't seeing a question in the list, and I'm assuming she's looking at the flag mapping document. It was a new request, so I got that added, and it is going to actually be incorporated into the pre-screening next sprint, which starts tomorrow, and I gave the card number. We had some questions Cassie had put in here. Are some of the following questions needed? Some other people had mentioned some stuff like this. The question, if you could do things all over again, would you choose the same path for yourself? What would you change? We're getting rid of that. That kind of has like a negative connotation to it, that they didn't maybe do it right. So what would they change? So when you guys get the survey, we have some additional open-ended questions we think are a little more asset-based, that we would prefer to ask there. What else would you like to share about your goals? So we changed this yesterday. Excuse me. I still need to go in. We're going to have at the bottom of all of the sections, we're going to have these two like optional open questions, and we are changing the verbiage. Previously it was like, is there anything else you'd like to share? We're going to ask, what else about your, and then insert whatever the page is, goals, health, legal needs, whatever it might be. Should we know so we can plan in a way that works best for you? So this is more of a space for you guys to like, if there's anything else you're learning related to their health or their goals or their legal needs that aren't like a direct correlation to you being able to like answer question sets or type in a box, this is a space for you to note that here. And then any notes or observations you guys have regarding this topic, you have as a space here. So that's what those questions are giving you guys space to do. And we'll have them at the bottom of all the sections. Same thing about the do-over question. We're getting rid of that one. This was also looking at 2 and 3. We're getting rid of 2. And we had some people say some stuff about what steps have you taken to reach your goals. We have some new open-ended questions in the goals page that might get at that. So that's coming in this survey. And then if you still feel like, no, I don't think these other open-ended questions are really getting at that, you can definitely add like, no, I still think we should ask this. We did talk a little bit about this question. We put some other ones in there that were getting at what I think you guys want to get at. We were worried if we said, what steps have you guys taken to reach your goals? They might say, well, I came to the American Job Center. So like, that's a step I've taken. So we're kind of wanting to know, like, what are some things you've already done? And so we just phrased the questions a little different. But again, if you don't think we got it, what you're trying to figure out, definitely feel free to add. And that thing, are there any other questions you think we should add to that? Again, I apologize. I'm still getting over that cough, so I might randomly just stop talking, unmuted, and probably coughing. So there's a question where it's pulling content into the application. Essentially, this question is like it's pulling content from the pre-screening and application into these gray boxes. And will we be able to edit those? Will the Creo panelists be able to edit those? Yes, they will. So I need to add some edit icons here. They'll be able to edit this information when we're at this point, right? The application's locked. So what we'll do is we'll pull the question set back in to the assessment, and you can update it here to further like refine the assessment, because some of these might change additional questions you get, especially in like the legal needs and childcare needs and stuff like that. So we won't change the application, but we'll open the question set back up in the assessment and allow you to update there as part of this assessing process you're going through. So you will have the ability to edit at this point. And then Rory just agreed with Nicole's comment about this question above. So I just put the same thing. We have a survey coming out that might get at that. If not, we can add that to the comments. Tell me what interests you about your goals. So just thought some wording was off, so I'll look at some wording options for that. Now we're moving to the education history page. Crystal, great point here. I took that out of the list, so I just crossed it out of the document. Hasn't been in development, doesn't need a card. But yeah, we're not going to have anybody at this point in those elementary or middle school because they would be too young to even be in the program. There were typos. I ran a spell check across Excel and got most of those fixed, and fixed a lot of the where it said every but should say ever. You guys don't need to worry about flagging typos right now. I'll run all of that through and have a proofer go through it before it moves to development. At what point are we asking highest level of education? We ask that in the application. And we ask everybody that in the application. Why is the IDES question in the education history section? It probably just got put there because that's where we were asking some of the concurrent program things, but most of the other programs were offering like training services, where IDES is more job search career services and connecting with employers. Do we think this question would be better suited asking it in the work history or employment expectation section? You guys think that
Yes.
that would be better suited there? Yeah. Okay. Can I get some thumbs up or yeses in the chat if other people think moving the have you ever received help from IDES, such as job search assistance, resume writing, or using Illinois job links, prefer that in employment history? Okay. I'll move that then. The homework will be the survey and additional Miro board or UAT screens to review, or just the survey. So the homework will just be the survey, but I'm going to give you the Miro board and the flag mapping document. So when I say like, hey, these are the other questions we're thinking about adding to the goals page, or whatever page, you guys can easily have those resources to come back here and like remind yourself what we're doing. I also asked, like, are there any other questions you want to ask? And so you can see the questions that are already on the page to see if there's anything else in addition to the data-driven and the open-ended questions, if there's anything else you think we should ask.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's what I meant. I just meant like, will we have like access to that in case we forgot? Like, well, wait, what did it say on the one we reviewed? So
Yeah.
I didn't know if this gets like, locked for editing if you guys are working on it, if it messes you up, or if we, if we look at, so we can still have view access to it. So, oh, great.
Perfect. All right. The other comment looks like it's for Alice thing. So I will move this to the employment history section. There's some comments here about the IEP 504 questions. We're going to, we're working on redoing, let me set that. Those questions, we're working with the title partners that serve in that area and trying to come up with a more customer-centered way to ask that while still being able to report federally. We need to know, is someone currently receiving a 504? Is someone currently receiving an IEP? Is someone previously received an IEP? These will only be asked to somebody who's flagged for a disability, so we have some kind of yes response to a disability question. And then additionally, we'll also be looking at schooling. IEPs are, K through 12, up to 21, and then a 504. We're looking only for currently. So if they're not currently in school, that's not something we're looking to map. A lot of what we're trying to do with this entire process is look at this business logic. So we're only asking the questions when we need to. We don't want everybody to have to answer the IEP 504 questions. We know there's only certain situations in which those would come around. Same with a lot of the other questions we're doing. So that's one of the things I need to incorporate into the survey before I send it out to you, is on some of these questions, we would only ask them in specific situations. So not only do I want to say, should we ask this question, but I want to say, we would use the following business logic around when we would ask this question. So you guys understand, not everybody would necessarily get some of the questions. Especially in education and work history, if we know they've never worked before, there's some questions we're not going to ask them about previous jobs because they've already told us they've never had a job before, especially our youth. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind, that we're really working to make these intuitive. So we're not asking questions to somebody where it would make no sense to ask those questions. And if you see us asking questions and it's well, this makes no sense to ask in this user set or user base, we want to know that. We're trying to catch as much of that as possible, but there might be things that you guys are more aware of from just being in the field that we didn't capture, that we can continue to make the system even more intuitive in that way. Are you currently in school? Had a note that we're only asking adult and dislocated worker, and that is because we already asked youth. Are you currently in school? We would display that up here for youth in the gray box because we already know it for youth. We don't ask adult and dislocated worker. So if we don't already know this, if we can't display it up here because they haven't previously answered that as part of the pre-screening and application, then it would be a question here. If we already know it up here, then we're not going to ask. That is what that was trying to say here, is we're not, again, we don't want to duplicatively ask questions either. Highest level of education complete. We collect that in the application and it would also display in this gray box, and we ask everybody highest level of education completed in application. So that'll display for everybody. All right, so where it asks, have you ever been enrolled in high school, college, career, or technical education program? Is there a way to maybe also include the term post-high school? That might make it more clear and remind career planners that asking these questions, that we would like to know if the applicant participated in a career technical learning, not just high school or college, but perhaps if they went to another type of post-secondary vocational. Yes, that's something we can explore. And then just that one as just a green to that. So we'll move that to the, where did we say we're going to move that to? the employment section. We can do that. We can work on that as part of rebuilding that question. All right. Any other questions on the employment history stuff before I move on to the next page? The word job setup, not everybody didn't feel totally confident on that. And Crystal proposed just like, what kind of job are you interested in? I can spend some time looking at the wording of this. And come up with something. I think I understand where you guys are moving and where the state's kind of wanting to go. We want to make it clear that it's not like what kind of like I would be a nurse or whatever, but it's more the setup or the environment, not environment. But I'll look at the wording of that.
Yeah, like setup schedule. I mean, I get what you're saying with it. And yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get like so hung up on that word. I felt bad typing. I'm like, oh, she can think I'm like really being critical, but it's just, I get it. And it does make sense that you want to distinguish between when you say what type of job. Oh yeah, that could easily and probably most commonly to a job seeker would be interpreted as, oh, you mean like what kind of career or what kind of occupation do I want? So I get the reason for distinguishing it. And, you know, it's you know, it's one of those, the more I'm reading it, it's like, okay, I kind of get what it means. I might have been overthinking when I was thinking like, well, when they say set up, like, does that imply like setting them up with a job? Like we're going to help them with job placement, but I'm probably overthinking that. So don't necessarily go entirely by me. I'll defer to the consensus.
All right, yeah, and it was something we went back and forth with too, and some other people made comments, so definitely something to relook at. This next one, I believe the wording for the response, I have contacted employer directly should be, I have contacted employers directly, so I can fix that. Would it make sense to include an option for I'm currently or actively job searching? Do you guys think that would be good to know that they're actively job searching? I'll pull open that list. What steps have you already taken to look for work? Here's what we currently have. I have searched for jobs online. So this you're saying they could have done these in the past. And it might not be that they're actively doing that. Is that what you're getting at? We have Thaddeus on. Thaddeus, is that what you were getting at in your comment?
Yeah, I think just in a couple instances, we've had individuals where they kind of gave up on it, or they're referencing job searching from a while ago.
Should this question just be like, so from your guys' perspective, is what we're needing to know here is like, what steps are you currently taking to look for work? Like, Is that more of what we're wanting to get at here versus like them saying, well, yeah, 5 years ago I searched for jobs online?
Yeah, I think that could work too.
Thoughts from the group on tweaking the wording of this question to make it like, what steps have you actively already taken? I'll make that wording much more customer centered. To make it more like presently, which of these have they done? You can do thumbs ups or yeses in the chat or no's in the chat. I don't know if there's a thumbs down emoji. There's not. Oh, there is. You just have to search for it. But yeah, if I get a little more feedback from the group on if moving that direction is what you guys think would be beneficial here. So we would change the wording of this question to what steps are you taking to look for work? Instead of like, what have you done, to just make it more like they're currently doing. Yeah, what steps have you recently taken to look for work? So we can change that to make it more that they're not pulling on, past long time ago actions. All right, get that updated. Oh, you want too many windows open. Typo. Oh, that fixed. That's on a comment. It might be in the flag mapping document. Okay, this is another one I wanted to get your guys's thoughts on from your being in the field. So we want to please share your work history. And this was said that this language is a little too subjective. We don't need to list every job, just ones that are the most recent or most related to the kind of work you're looking for. If somebody was employed, that's what we would say. If somebody had picked an option for unemployed, we'd say you don't need to list every job. We just need to know any jobs you've had in the last year, as well as any others related to the kind of work you're looking for. From your guys' perspective, what kind of work history are you looking to collect? We don't want people to feel like you have to enter in every single job they ever had dating back the last 10 years to like, their first job they got in high school or something. We want to set some like parameters, like guidance around like what is the most helpful in career planning for the amount of and types of employment history you guys are gathering. So I'd like to open that up for feedback from you all. You guys can come off mute or type in the chat your thought around, from a local level, what you would like to see is the recommended length of work history we recommend to gather. Yeah. Rory says it's kind of one of those things that's subjective and case by case. That's kind of why we left the text a little subjective, because last 3 jobs might not be great if, depending on the situation. They could have some really good work experience from 5 years ago and been doing odd jobs recently Um,
Well, I'm gonna agree with the work history. I mean, we don't need to go back too many years, but 3 to 5 years is sufficient. I mean, because with technology and how work jobs is changing, you can't go back too many years because it's not going to be worth anything in the corporate world or government world as well. So 3 to 5 years would to me would be the best. And it depends. You just don't want, okay, you got this job that was paying you, and then you got a little part-time job, and you have 4 or 5. Is what best this client want? What type of job is that client looking for? So you wanted to kind of match the work history to
mhm.
some extent, but you don't want to just load up the work history.
All right, so we could look at this part about others related to the kind of job you're looking for. I think is relevant, something we'd want to keep in there. And then also something about, we don't need every job, but the last 3 to 5 years of work histories, especially those related to the kind of work you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Um, we could even add some text like, um, based on the customer, the need for the type of work history you collect will be different, and then have more training around that. Um, about, how to have those conversations and make those decisions. Yes, and we do have some things where we're going to look in the system to try to figure out when jobs have changed frequently. And then if we see a lot of changes, have some follow-up questions about that. So,
Maybe easier type, Olivia. Maybe I agree with, I don't want to populate 20 jobs because that's what they've had in the last 5 years necessarily, because maybe each job isn't a real need to know. But maybe just a question of, about how many jobs have you held? How many places have you worked in the past 5 years? Something like that would even give, and then at least would prompt the question and go, okay, we're trying to help you find a career, and having a very intermittent thing could be something we need to talk about.
okay.
But if I only enter 2 jobs because I worked at a gas station and I worked at a restaurant and but I'm looking to become a nurse. Oh, okay. Well, you did work as a custodian somewhere where you had to learn CPR. So let's put that down. Then you lose the history of all those other jobs and the ability to know that you should ask, why have you changed so many jobs? If you only put a couple of them down because you think those are the only ones that really had the skills that we need to know today. It's not only the skills, it's the ability to work and maintain employment. And what can we do as a program to help you understand? It's something that you have to overcome. So I just think somewhere you need to understand that the amount of jobs people hold is a topic of discussion.
Right. I'll relook at some of that and see maybe there's some additional questions we need to ask and just different ways to word that. I think this is getting at that. So I'm going to use this plus the comments we have here to kind of help drive how we move forward with that. It's one. Okay. Yeah, I agree. In case you're wondering, purple is like I need to do something before I can mark this off. Red is well, and this one, I marked this one purple, but red is like we've made a card, we've discussed it. Provide the correct services to help you move forward on your job search plan. Okay, I'm gonna put this at the end so I have that whole thing. Perfect. 10-4. We'll get that cleaned up so it's customer centered. Health. Okay, so I am going to talk to the state around the drug test question. We had some conversation come up in our state thing. From your guys' perspective, is this because the question here is this something that can always be asked? Right now, we're only asking it if they trigger substance use. Can you guys give me a little bit of this, like what's the purpose of asking this question to people who may not ever go into training or a job where they even need to do a drug test? Or have any kind of substance issues where it might even be an issue. We're trying to figure out like the most customer centered way to address this question. And we were thinking maybe even asking it with substance use flagged could still not be very customer centered, and more looking at like, do they have a goal in an industry where they may need to get drug tested? So I'd like to know a little bit from you guys around why asking this question to everybody would be helpful, because it's not very customer centered to do so. And I had gotten that question in some other spaces as well. So I just would like to hear from you guys on how this is going to be used for everybody, if we look at expanding it.
Well, I know that's a crazy question to ask everybody. Now, depending what training you want to go into, I know CDL asks that you have to pass a drug test. We got that. So I get that. The health field as well, depending what you're going in for, ask those questions. Doing A+ computers, stuff like that, that is not needed. I don't know how you could put the question there, but put it to generate if somebody going in a particular training. Like if they want to go to any of those two that I just mentioned, yes, that question should pop up, because why put you in a CDL training where you know you ain't going to pass the drug test?
Right. And we definitely want to do that. We will probably even like if they go into a training and we haven't, like if they somehow didn't get this question and then they go into a training and they haven't answered it and we know we need to know that, we would incorporate it into the training assessment. Because right now we're only asking it if they flag for substance use. Which they might not flag for that, but so we might still need to ask it in the training one. But we're also looking at like, should we just ask it to anybody with a goal that aligns with an industry that, like the CDL or the healthcare, like TDL, transportation, or healthcare, or something where it could be a thing. So we're kind of exploring that. But it would still kind of remain locked down, so not everybody gets that question.
That would be good. I think it would be better going that route, because that's a question that somewhat invading on a person's privacy, especially if they're not going into a field that required that testing. That could be a pending lawsuit or something for some type of discrimination. I could just see it happening. There's always just take one to just get the whole thing going. So
Yeah, I think this question comes late when you're starting to talk about occupations. There's no other reason to know it until you're starting to learn about, okay, are you going to go into training? That might be an issue. Especially with the occupation you want to train for. But I don't want it to, I agree with Robert. I don't want it showing up early. And if it doesn't have any relation, then it doesn't show up at all. Now, I don't know what You know, if we have an indication, clear indication with every occupation, whether a drug test or a felony, you know, a judicial system, you know, interaction creates issues or not. I don't know how well an occupation selection would say, oh, by the way, we need to ask you these questions. But, you know, I don't think you need to know it when you're just getting services. I guess I guess the only one I could see, and I don't know how you go about it, to your point also, Robert, is if someone's got some kind of a judicial history of assault or things of that where you worry about them being around other people. I don't know, you know, that's somebody legal has to worry, you know, come up with
Agree.
that direction. I sure as heck wouldn't. But you know, you want to make sure everyone's safe. And if somebody walks in the door and you don't know any of these things, at what point do you want to know that from everybody?
Well said.
And I see the comment in the chat too. If anybody else has thoughts on this or how they would like to see this, definitely put those in the chat so I can have that context as we continue. Like I said, I have this flagged to continue discussion on looking at this question. So we will be kind of like refining the way in which it's engaged in the assessment.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because you wouldn't want somebody that, I mean, you know, could, you know, have potential relapsing or something, you know, like, no, you know, setting them up for training in a job that in an occupation that might be strict about testing, and then not make them at least aware. So yeah, I don't know. We'll think about that. It is a good question, because, you know, maybe later on, like during occupation research, during the career planning, where it says like, okay, you've identified these occupations, you know, are you aware of any background tests or drug screens or other pre-screening requirement that employers in this industry would typically require? And then yes or no, and then like, do you feel confident you would pass it? You know, and even that, I don't know, maybe that's like treading unsteady waters too. I don't know, but something, you know, I'm just trying to think of a way that you would still be able, you know, that you could still broach the subject, but in a, you know, in a more timely manner, or at a juncture in the assessment process where it might make, you know, more sense. But yeah, it might be a slippery slope either way. But or I guess as long as you just, you know, in the research of their occupations that they're doing collaboratively with the career planners or career counselors, would be, you know, just are you aware of any, you know, at least, you know, maybe identifying that, hey, are they that these are there, and then kind of, you know, just as long, you know, at least you did due diligence in knowing that that we did look at you know, employers and you know, job listings or employers, you know, and if they more often than not we're going to require certain things, like, you know, so like background checks, health records, things like that, and just, you know, making sure they're aware that those occupations that they're considering choosing, employers typically might require those things, and, you know, and then maybe not ask them, but at least make them aware, or something like that.
Perfect. And I see you in more comments or context in the chat too. So we'll continue to explore that and make sure we're incorporating that in the best way that we can in the flow of how we're engaging the customer and the different things that they're flagging or triggering. Cassie, you had said, unless the customer has a disability, does this question have to be universal? Were you talking about I didn't see the question. I didn't know if you were talking about just like all the health questions in general. Most of them are flagging based on what they said about some kind of health needs, whether it's a disability or a health condition. They would only flag in that. We had some that are flagging only for substance use. I wasn't quite sure what you meant there. All the health questions in general. Yeah, so we have most of them are not disability focused. If they have selected that they have a disability, a health condition, I have to look at the list up here, or mental or emotional needs, we're asking if they need any kind of support. This is really getting into, and Crystal's comment kind of got it. of like, if they have some kind of health condition going on, is there a referral that we can provide to them to help with that? Whether it is they're needing, you know, help with health insurance or glasses or substance recovery or housing help because they don't feel safe at home. That's what these are getting at. And you said exactly, I agree with Crystal. So I think we could maybe include some text, looking at this comment about like context of like, we want to explore these options with you to see if there's like any kinds of referrals that we can make to help you get this stuff covered. So it's not that, you know, we can cover some of that directly at this office. We can help find people who can. Crystal, do you think that would help? I saw a thumbs up from Cassie.
I think so. I just think at any time that you're asking any of the health questions, we just don't want to give the impression that if it's customer centered, we don't want to disappoint people in thinking that we are, you know, our program is going to be able to address all these health questions. It needs to be, well, in the context of this, we can make referrals, or, you know, if it directly impacts your ability to attend training or go through an educational program, then that's obviously something we would need to know. But giving some kind of context, whereas it just seems like they're kind of coming out of the blue at the moment.
Perfect. The question regarding having a restriction or suspended license, maybe I didn't have this in here, right? So do you have a valid driver's license? The answer options would be if they pick I have a driver's license, but it's currently suspended, then that's when the this question displays. And then if their answer option here is, oh, I'm sorry, if they have a restriction, they could have a restriction or a suspension. And obviously we wouldn't ask both of these, whichever they picked here. If they picked the one restriction, we'd ask this. If they picked the one with suspension, we'd ask this. So we can know a little bit more about that. Does that make sense, Cassie? Do you want me to go through that again, Cassie? Oh, I see in the chat. Sorry, I wasn't looking at the chat. There should probably be an option that says public transportation doesn't exist in my area for the question about concerns public transportation. That is a reality that affects many individuals all over the state. Let's look at that real quick. I saw that somewhere else too, I believe. Or maybe I'm just remembering reading your comment previously. So in this list, how will you get to work? They might not pick public transportation because they don't have it. And excuse me. You're saying we should maybe have because we're only asking, do they have concerns about using public transportation? If they select that's going to be their means, but they wouldn't have it. So you're saying maybe a question in here for them to flag that public transportation is not even an option for them? And then what do we do with that?
Honestly, I didn't see that up in the gray box. I didn't see that that was one of the, yeah, up there. I didn't look at that part. So I guess if public transportation isn't available, then they wouldn't choose that. I was just looking at it as it was on the list down
A
below.
concern, yeah,
Yeah,
I see
not
what you're saying.
Yeah, not that it was gonna, be there for everybody. It's only gonna be the ones that pop up.
Mhm. Is there a way to include ride sharing, Uber, Lyft into these question response? Many use state this as their transportation option. Yeah. And when we talked about other, and we're like, we can't think of another like other, like how else would people get somewhere? Private jet maybe, but we could include an other, and they could type in that Uber, Lyft, or if there are any other, because you guys have already came up with another option that we couldn't come up with. Thaddeus, do you think that would work? Is another option where they could put that in, or do you think it's common enough that Uber and Lyft should be its own item?
I think that should work.
Okay. And then that way, if something new comes about or there's something we didn't even think of, they could put that. And I need to make that purple. So we're actually looking a little bit at rewording this question to 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 not necessarily say like if something changes, what would you do? But just kind of ask about a more open-ended question about this in general and to everybody. So I'm put this here, and then I'll show you guys what we put. We want to help you be successful and make sure you can attend work or finish school or training. In the past, when you needed to go somewhere or had other responsibilities, how are you arranging childcare or dependent care? Because more of what we want to know is like, what are their options? So if they have, you know, reliable child, like what are they using? What's available to them? So that if things come up as we're working with them, we can be aware of like helping them, figure that out so they're not having to miss school or work. And that replaced the question we previously had, a yes no question on like would they have a backup plan. And we also felt like some people might just say yes for fear of like getting in trouble if they said no, or like not being engaged if they said no. Any questions on that? Are we assuming a customer has a child? This question only gets, this page will only be prompted if they have flagged for in the application or pre-screening that they have children. So we ask some questions in there, and we'll do something like if they haven't flagged this page, they won't answer it, and we'll say something like, based on the information you shared, we have not identified you have any children under the age of 18, are pregnant, or have any dependent care needs. Is that correct? Or we, on some of these other ones, I think I put it the first one, we might have like an on off button, like same thing. And then if you're like, oh, we now that we've got to know them better, things have changed, we do need this, you could flip it on or say yes, and it would open up the initial assessment question about the needs that we have up here. And then once they answer that, it would tier the appropriate subset in this assessment that feeds off of that initial question. Because again, we wouldn't want to ask them all of these. We would want to know, okay, what are your needs now that you say yes, this is applicable to you? Like what's your situation? And then we can ask further questions. Does that make sense, Cassie? Are we picking one of the 3 bracketed areas as the best way to ask about childcare? They all seem unnecessarily duplicative. So we're not necessarily asking you guys to pick the one. The system will display the one appropriate to their situation. So the brackets are like if they triggered because they selected I need more reliable childcare, then this would happen. This is what we would say. If they said stable or need more reliable, like if those are not checked, but they picked that they were a single parent, shared custody, or had special needs, or were pregnant, we would ask this set. A lot of them are duplicative, but they're a little bit different in the wording because their situation is a little bit different. So they would not get all of these. By this one, like eliminates the fact that they could have this one. They couldn't have both of them. So that's kind of what these brackets are trying to get at is they're like based on a situation, this question set might come up. These are dependent upon these and so on. So they might not get all of these. They might say no here and not get this next set. But that's what the brackets are trying to do. It was just trying to kind of clearly show you these fall together instead of just a running list of things where you have to kind of read all these yellow notes to know how they fit. Does that make sense, Crystal? Yeah, it kind of goes to the, we want it to be really intuitive, and it's hard to show you all the questions and show you the intuitiveness of it because there's a lot of scenarios. Tell me more about your specific situation. May cover this, but would it be better to also have a multiple choice question that identifies who is providing the childcare, daycare, school, family, friends, etc.? Yeah, I think this might have been the replace to, oh, tell me more about your specific situation. That's if they picked other. Do you guys, we left most of the like, how is care being provided an open text field for more context. If that's something the group feels like we strongly need data points on, knowing if it's family, like to run reports on, so we would want them like radio buttons, we can do that. We felt that would be more of a conversation. Thaddeus, I don't know if you have any more you want to add around that.
I may have missed that open-ended question, so I think if we have that, we should be okay.
And we did recently put that, like updated that open-ended question, so it might not have been there when you looked.
Cool.
We have about 15 minutes left. I want to try to get through a little bit more of this. Then we can finish up the review of the feedback next week while also going over your survey results. So we'll go through at least this page, and we might be at time then. I'm going to talk to the state group around if we should always ask the question around background checks. That kind of falls in with the drug testing. Want to make sure we're asking that in an equitable and customer-centered way, but understanding that there may be needs for that. Again, we might be able to look at sectors to try to focus that in a little bit more, but it's hard because just because it's a sector practice doesn't necessarily mean every employer follows that. Some may do more, some may do less. So we'll look at that one. Crystal asked, do we care about felonies? We are used to asking about misdemeanors as well. So if we look at our legal, we're asking more about felonies. That's a question to the group that I can take back to the state. I believe we were looking more at types of items that would prevent us from being able to like work on the work site versus, like if employers just it's it's harder for somebody with a background to get a job versus like you cannot have this and work on our work site is I believe the intent of where they were going with trying to keep them at these and like the violent felony and the sex offender might be hard nosed for some work sites or some places of employment. I'm going to open it up to you guys to provide more context on what you need at a local level to know for career planning.
I'm just looking at some of those questions, and I know people that will come in and they're not going to answer that question. I don't see how we could get that information from the police department or the sheriff department because it'd be a violation. And asking the question is only going to come up if you do a background check. We, the people who making them eligible for WIOLA service, we're not doing background check. And again, the language is good to have, but let's be honest, who's going to answer if they had a violent felony, offender, a sex offender? They're not going to answer that. So how is this going to make a client? Because when they had that, they're already scared to even answer that because they feel that they're going to be discriminated anyway towards a job. So it's up to the company to if they run the background check, do they want this person based on what the felony, what the sex offender charges was? That's a really a loaded question for you ask somebody to come off the street and answer, especially if they just came out of jail or something. Who knows? I just want to hear what everybody got to say on this.
Is this one of those also looks like I just realized too, I think so, but is this one of those that gets they would only see these questions if they've already self-disclosed, like if it's flagged that they answer yes to being justice involved or having a legal situation, and then it opens up these questions.
That's
and even
correct.
then I was just, oh, okay, you just put it in. I was going to say, yeah, you might maybe prefer not to answer because like Robert said, because even if they open up about the one thing, it's like maybe they don't want to open up about the other, and then it gives them an out so that they can get past that screen. But it's hard to say. I mean, if they've already self-disclosed, I mean, some clients are open about it, and they're hey, it's in my past, and they make making amends with it, and then some, depending on the nature of the offense, I could see if it's really sensitive, they may disclose that they've had a justice involvement, a criminal past, but they may then they may get to that point of like, okay, this is the point I don't really want to go in any more detail, but it's tricky because it does help. And then as far as the like misdemeanor or other types of offenses, I wasn't sure if that was in the current IWDS because it's a reporting element or something. I mean, if it's not required, I didn't know if
Well,
those
I
if
know it was a
that's why people
misdemeanor
ask.
was on there. I want to say misdemeanor was on there, but I
Yeah.
like how I prefer not to answer. I like that. Some people do get their record sponge, and it's that's a good. I mean, this is a good conversation to talk about as far as
It
background.
did. It, I, I just wanted to jump in for a second because as we're going through these types of questions, I'm part of the reentry committee, and we go out to the summits and things like that. And we're speaking to those ones that are reentering their community. So the reentry program is basically stating that we are in the position to assist those with these types of backgrounds, the justice involved. And I think that we really have to strategize so that we're not turning them off at the same time with saying that this is a program to assist them and give them that second, third, fourth chance. So I don't know. I know these questions are going to have to be implemented at some point. But I think that that should be more so when you're sitting with them and kind of going over their career goals and whatever they are choosing as a career path, then have that detailed conversation. Because we're saying that we're here for them, and the state has really been pushing to implement the reentry portion of it. I think that has to be considered.
I think that's a good point, Monique. We'll continue, sorry, I was looking at some chats too. We'll continue exploring this one as well with the background checks. Sorry, I'm looking at the comments. Focus on the peppers. Yeah. We added some open-ended questions around legal that I would like you guys to look at. Because it's more like, is there anything, maybe not make it harder for you to get a job, but is there any legal things, we had some things listed that we need to plan around? So more keeping it like, these are things that we can help plan around to still be successful, not that they would prevent you or make trying to take out some of that verbiage. So we might have some really good open-ended questions that will meet this. And again, if you don't think they do, when you review, definitely feel free to add in, like, that's not quite getting at exactly what I think we need to know here. Add those in.
Yeah, I like that. And either one, either the open-ended or Status's comment specifically, because that also then kind of some of the others have asked, like some of the questions are, we got to make sure we're putting them into context. Why are they asking? That would kind of put it into context. Like, do you think this might make it harder, or with other kind of wording? But basically, is that something? And it gives them the opportunity, if they don't choose to want to disclose that or discuss it, that's that we understand. But if they do get to the point, where they are willing to self-disclose and tell us that, then this kind of puts into context, like, this is why we're asking all these questions, by the way, is that we want to make sure that we're helping you. Well, if we can refer you, in a lot of, to Prairie State Legal Services, if there's anything, we can refer you to agencies that we know, the county or Prairie State Legal Services, something to help you get records expunged. If there's anything you need help with. So I like that you asked that too, about, are there any other legal challenges, not necessarily arrests or convictions, but, that we can maybe refer, we can't solve for you, but that then it lets the career planner know, like, well, we might be able to refer them to entities that could assist them with that. But it also then, puts it in the context of, like, the other reason we're asking is, like, do you need help? We can help you plan around how this may or may not impact your job search or your job or career choice. If there's some that are kind of a zero tolerance or kind of a no, as far as certain types of records in your history, getting hired in a certain industry, again, it brings us back to, kind of that point. So the question about, having a question open-ended, or just, what else, do you want to discuss about this in relation to your career search, job search, and all that? It helps, like I said, I think it's good. It could be good because I think it could help put it into context as to, why we're asking these things. We're not trying to be obtrusive or invasive or anything.
Monique, what are your thoughts on instead of asking, like, do you have any of these things? Because we might have to do background checks, of asking more of a question of like, do you feel like your legal background might make it harder for you to find a job or get into training? And if they say yes, ask another open-ended question about, could you tell us a little bit more about those convictions and why it might be hard for you, or make sure we're using the right terms too, um, to make it more open, and like, how can we help you around that versus like, do you have a violent felony, or the questions that we had before?
Yeah, I think that the open-ended questions, it kind of makes it a more of a warm conversation for sure. But I think that, giving them the opportunity to express what their concerns are regarding their own background, it kind of leaves it open. I think that the question that you just posed is very fitting. Like, what about your background do you feel may hinder you? And it kind of opens up for more conversation. But I think
Okay.
that is a beginning because they're already apprehensive, about I think someone said that earlier, that they're apprehensive about their background, coming back into society, being, I can't think of a better word, but judged kind of, and just getting them in on the conversation and seeing where they are. In putting in the work that they need to do, as well as knowing that this impact can be very impactful, because there's not much that we can do as far as an employer determining whether they want to accept this person or not. But we can truly kind of encourage them and kind of put them in the right direction if we know where they are and where they'd like to go.
Okay, perfect. I have that noted, so we can look at maybe tweaking that question to make it more open, and then I'll circle back to about like the misdemeanor part, and if that's something we need to be capturing. I don't believe it's a federal reporting requirement, but by making this an open-ended question, Crystal, that might just come out as part of their open discussion if they feel like they have concerns around that part of their background, making it harder for them to pass a background check, get a job, go to training, whatever it might be that they end up discussing. And then I think it was also mentioned, hold on, that maybe this too is like appropriate around career planning too. So like, once we start getting into like, okay, now that I've done this, I have some jobs that I actually am interested in. And so it might be a conversation that like, here they're like, not really, but we can still bring it back around, similar to what we're doing where we're like highlighting information and then asking more detailed questions. We might, highlight like, hey, this was your concern. Now you're looking at jobs. Maybe they didn't say anything and we re-ask, like, okay, now that we're thinking of this occupation, somebody mentioned something earlier. So it's not always just we ask it once and we're done, but it's an ongoing conversation and relationship we're building with the customer. And it might come out then too. So I just want to make sure that I captured that kind of like in your workflow of everything you guys were talking about too. So we'll pause here. We have 3 more pages, plus we will review the survey results. We'll get that all sent out to you guys. Sorry, to get completed. We are going to give you till the end of the day, Tuesday, or I'm sorry, end of the day, Wednesday, and then we'll go over those results on Thursday when we meet. Do you guys have any questions or comments before we wrap up for today? All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time. I really appreciate We had folks go in and look at this. I really appreciate you taking the time to go in and get that reviewed. If you see anything as you're going back through it, doing the survey homework, I'm going to continue to keep my eye on this. So go ahead and you can have another week to add thoughts and feedback in here as you're doing that survey homework if something comes up. And we will talk to you all next Thursday. I hope you all have a safe and happy Halloween.
You too. Take care, everyone.